I caught my wife cheating on me with my cousin. I hid him, exposed them, and ruined their lives. If this story resonates with you, subscribe to the channel and share in the comments which city you're watching from. We'd love to know where our community is growing. My cousin Max, now 29, was almost my age. I'm 28 now. He was also an only child, and we quickly became inseparable. We spent most of our time together. I even started going straight to his house after school. Both parents liked the arrangement. His mom didn't work, so my parents were relieved someone was watching me while they were at work. And his mom was happy her son wasn't spending time alone. Things didn't change as we grew up. We've been best friends ever since, though it feels weird to say that now. I always saw him as a brother, and I don't just say that to say it. I genuinely consider him my blood brother. We went to different universities, but we stayed in touch. We played online and met up when we both came home. He was even the best man at my wedding. That's part of the reason this whole situation is so hard to process. I met Lena, 27, 4 years ago. I wasn't looking for a relationship at the time. My past dating experiences had fizzled out pretty fast, usually because they weren't looking for anything serious. With Lena, it was different. She was easy to talk to, and I just felt comfortable around her. She was much more mature than the other women I'd been with, and she stuck with me when I was broke and working my way up. Max was one of the first people I introduced her to. They started joking with each other as if they'd known each other for years. They were two of the most important people in my life, and seeing them get along felt great. It was like I was building some kind of family of my own. Lena and I got married 2 years after we met. Max was our best man, and he gave a speech about how we'd been brothers since childhood and how happy he was I'd found someone who made me better. Lena squeezed my hand and even got teary-eyed. Max kept coming over quite a bit after we got married. Not that he was always there. He had his job and his own life, and he understood we also needed alone time, but he still made sure to spend a couple of days a week. Most of the time, he'd just come hang out, and other days the three of us would go out together. Lena and Max got along so naturally that, in fact, I felt very lucky. I'd heard stories of couples who couldn't stand their in-laws, and I was grateful that wasn't our case. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs, but I trusted them too much. I loved Lena and Max's family. I never would have imagined something could be going on between them. About a year after we got married, things started to change in ways I couldn't ignore. Lena became protective of her phone. She'd tilt it so I couldn't see it when she was typing or flip it face down when she put it on the table or couch. When I asked her who she was talking to, she'd say it was work or one of her friends. And then Max started showing up more often when I wasn't home. Normally, I wouldn't have questioned that. He's family, and he doesn't live that far. It wasn't strange for him to stop by to say hi or raid our fridge while running errands. But there were two things about all that seemed strange to me. The first was that he started coming more when I wasn't there. The second was that neither of them mentioned his visits. I only found out because I started noticing small details. One afternoon, I came home from work and noticed an extra coffee cup in the sink. Lena never had more than one cup, cause it upset her stomach. I didn't want to seem paranoid, but I couldn't get out of my head. When I asked Lena about it, she said it was probably mine. I reminded her I hadn't had coffee that morning because I had to get to work early. I had to drink the horrible coffee they gave at the office. She made a whole show of suddenly remembering Max had stopped by that morning. She said he came to drop something off and stayed a while to have a cup of coffee. Normally, I would have believed her, but I couldn't overlook the fact that she'd lied first. I was sure she hadn't forgotten Max had stopped by the house. I tried to convince myself it was paranoia, but I started looking out for more signs. The next thing I noticed was fast food wrappers in the trash. They came from places I knew I hadn't ordered anything from. When I asked Lena about it, she said she'd bought it while running errands. I knew that wasn't true. She didn't really like fast food. She preferred to cook when she got home. Max, on the other hand, practically lived on junk food. That's when I started to realize things weren't adding up. The more I observed, the more I noticed. Sometimes things weren't exactly where I'd left them. On one occasion, I even caught a whiff of Max's cologne in the air. I was sure he was coming over more often, and that Lena was lying about it for some reason. Even with all those signs piling up, I kept telling myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. That's probably why I'm so ashamed of all this. I feel stupid. I should have noticed sooner, but I couldn't accept the idea of them having something going on. It was unthinkable. Still, I struggled to believe it, even when I caught them together. I told Lena I was going to work, though I'd actually taken the day off. I even drove my car to another location, parked it, and took a bus back home. I wasn't planning to catch them in the act. I just wanted to see if he really was coming over to find out what he did when he stopped by the house. I felt ridiculous sitting on the bus. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. But when I got off and walked back home, I could already see Max's car parked a few houses down. He probably thought it'd be less suspicious if he didn't park right in front, but I'd recognize his car anywhere. I opened the door and entered the house as silently as I could. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. They were both on the living room couch. Max was lying on his back, and Lena was on top of him. They hadn't started having relations yet, but they were largely undressed and kissing intensely. I immediately felt nauseous. I froze in the doorway, feeling like I was going to throw up. They didn't notice me for a few seconds. They were too engrossed in each other to realize there was someone else in the room. Then, Lena opened her eyes and saw me standing there. She shot up and quickly pulled up her shirt to cover herself. Max looked confused for a second, then turned to me and started hastily pulling up his pants. Nobody said anything at first. They were waiting for my reaction, and I was still trying to process what I'd seen. I'd known for a while something wasn't right, but I didn't expect something like this. Max spoke first. "Dude, it's not what it looks like." It was a stupid thing to say, but I guess he couldn't think of anything better. It looked like he was passionately kissing my wife, ready to do it right there in my living room. They were still trying to separate. Of course, it was exactly what it looked like. His response broke something inside me. I'd been fooled for so long, and now I felt he was treating me like a complete idiot. Normally, I'm a calm and rational person, but this pushed me too far. Before I knew what I was doing, I stepped forward and shoved him hard in the chest. He stumbled back against the couch, still half-dressed. My voice trembled with rage as I yelled at him to get out of my house before I killed him. I didn't mean it, but I was ready to beat him up. On a normal day, it probably would have been an even fight, but I was more furious than ever. I probably would have hurt him badly. Max tried to calm me, raised his hand, and said, "Listen, man." I hit him before he could say anything else. I landed 2 or 3 clean punches. He didn't expect it, and I knocked him to the ground. It was extremely satisfying, and I was tempted to continue. Lena got between us and yelled at me to stop. It took all my self-control not to hit her. I was furious with her too, but I had enough common sense not to make the situation even worse. I ignored her and focused on Max. He'd already moved away and was buckling his belt while gathering the rest of his clothes under his arm. He was preparing to flee. I yelled at him to get out of my house. He headed for the door, but turned one last time and said, "Let's talk this out, bro." I made a move towards him, but Lena grabbed my arm, and Max took the opportunity to leave half naked. With clothes in his arm, I broke free of her grip and stepped away from her. I asked her how long it had been going on. She said the same thing as Max, that it wasn't what it looked like. I asked her what I was supposed to think after seeing her on top of him. She tried to approach, but I held out my arm and told her to stay away. She started with the typical excuses that it didn't mean anything, that it just happened, that they were about to stop. I asked her again how long it had been happening. She said it had been a few months. I wasn't sure I believed her, but I knew I wasn't going to get the truth from her. For all I knew, they'd been sleeping together behind my back for years. It really didn't matter. Either way, it was all over. I told her to pack her things and leave the house. She realized this wasn't something we could fix, and she started to panic. She tried to negotiate with me to change my mind, but I didn't budge. I'm not going to hide that I said many horrible things to her. I was angry and hurt. However, I don't regret anything I said. She'd crossed every line. I don't know who started it all between the two of them, and I'm sure I'll never know. Anyway, it makes no difference. Both are guilty. When I finished venting and insulting her, she was crying on the living room couch. I left her there as I stormed out of the house to clear my mind. Max's car was nowhere to be seen. When I returned that night, she was still home, but her bags were already packed. She said she knew she'd made a mistake, and she was willing to give me space if that's what I needed. She just wanted me to promise her I'd give her a chance when I was ready to talk. I told her I wasn't going to be ready to talk. I asked her to imagine how she'd feel if she found me having relations with her sister. She had the nerve to say I was being disgusting. I reminded her I'd always seen Max as a brother, and what I'd witnessed was just as disgusting as what she imagined. She wouldn't forgive me, and I couldn't forgive her either. She didn't know what to answer that. She just stood by the door with her bags, looking at me as if waiting for me to change my mind. I didn't. She finally took her things and left, saying only, "I'll give you space." So far, she's kept her word. I haven't heard anything from her or Max. Maybe she told him to also give me space, hoping that would make me change my mind somehow. It hasn't happened, and it never will. I'm too angry with them, and I'm still ashamed I didn't realize sooner. Let's talk this out, bro. Talk about what? The weather? Fantasy football? He was probably surprised by the punch, cause in his mind, he'd already convinced himself this was something that could be fixed with a conversation. There are people who really believe they can betray you, be caught red-handed, and then simply negotiate their way out of trouble as if it were a parking ticket. Update 1. So I got a lot of comments assuring me I had no reason to feel ashamed cause it wasn't my fault. Hearing that helped me a lot. I kept feeling that somehow I should have noticed sooner. The stress of the situation wasn't letting me think clearly, and the comments helped me get my head back on straight. Once I managed to get past that, I was able to get into the right mindset to focus on what I needed to do next. The hardest part was finding a lawyer. I'd never needed one before, and I didn't know where to start. I spent a whole night reading about divorce lawyers and trying to figure out what my options were. Once I found a lawyer, he guided me through everything I needed to know. I followed all his advice, documented all communication with her, separated our finances, and secured all my important documents. He assured me the process would be quite straightforward, since we don't have kids and hadn't been married long. That was the first good news I received since all this started. He also insisted it was important to avoid any further confrontation with my cousin. Getting into a physical fight, even under the circumstances, would complicate things if she decided to make a problem. There was also the possibility Max would press charges against me. He told me that, in his opinion, Max would just let it go. It'd be awkward for him to have to testify given the circumstances of the fight. I knew I had to start telling people what had happened. It was only a matter of time before rumors about our divorce started circulating, and I wasn't going to let Lena distort the story in her favor. I didn't give people all the details. I just told them Lena and I were getting divorced due to infidelity. I didn't mention I caught her in the act or with whom I caught her. My lawyer told me to keep things to a minimum of details for now. It wouldn't look good if it seemed like I was trying to tarnish her image. Lena contacted me when she found out I was telling the truth. She wasn't dramatic. She just said she wished I'd given her the chance to talk before starting to tell people. In one of the messages, she said she'd cut all contact with Max, and it was a mistake she'd regret for the rest of her life. I didn't respond to any of them. Max also got in touch. He sent me a long message saying he never wanted things to end this way. He said I'd always be his brother, and we had to sort this out like brothers do. He also said he wanted to see us in person to clear things up. That message made me angry again from scratch. Brothers don't do what he did to me. What really infuriated me was the way he acted as if he was entitled to my forgiveness. He made it sound like I owed him the chance to explain himself. I told him to go to hell and blocked his number. The divorce went exactly as my lawyer said it would. We had no kids, so there was no custody to fight over. We hadn't been married long enough for alimony to be a problem. We split our joint savings in half, and each kept their own car. After the divorce was finalized, I was ready to start my new life, but I felt I had unfinished business. I'd already told everyone Lena had cheated on me, but it still didn't feel like enough. They didn't know exactly what she'd done, and nobody knew what Max had done either. I felt I was letting them get away with it, so I fixed that. I contacted everyone again, and this time I told them the whole story. I didn't omit a single detail. I explained how Lena had lied to me for so long, and how I'd caught them in the act. I was surprised so many people were on my side. Everyone knew how close I was to Max. People used to be surprised to find out he was my cousin and not my biological brother. They were as disgusted as I was by what they'd done. For a while, I hesitated to tell Max's parents. It wasn't for him. They were my aunt and uncle, but they treated me like a son growing up. They were good people, and I knew it would break their hearts. Still, I did it. They'd probably end up hearing the truth from someone else. So I felt I owed it to them to tell them myself. Just as I expected, they were heartbroken to hear it. Max and Lena tried to contact me after that. Max was disappointed but didn't try to blame me. He just apologized again and said he really wished I'd talked to him. Lena completely broke down. She sent me a series of messages ranging from begging me to answer her calls to swearing she never wanted to see me again. People started to have a very bad opinion of her after finding out what she did. Mutual friends stopped inviting her out. People stopped talking to her. She had to move back in with her parents, and both of them were giving her the silent treatment. She told me her father couldn't even look at her. It may sound petty, but I was glad to hear that. I was glad to see she'd lost something too. I've tried to be strong, but the truth is, losing a trusted family member and your wife in a single afternoon is hard. It's really hard, and it took me time to recover from the damage they both did to me. Getting them out of my life helped, but getting revenge on them helped even more. Hitting them where it hurt most and exposing who they really were felt like medicine for my soul. With the truth out there, I feel like I finally started to move on with my life. I haven't heard from either of them in a while, and I hope it stays that way. Nowadays, I try not to think about them. I think that's the true path to my recovery. Someday I'll forget both of them, but I'll never forget the lesson they taught me. What would you have done in his place? Would you have exposed them completely, or would you have moved on in silence? I'll read you in the comments.